I choked out when he declared I'd never be part of our family law firm. This is final. The firm goes to your brother. This is not for a woman. My stomach dropped. My hands shook. I had spent my entire life preparing for this. Years of internships, late nights, sacrifices nobody noticed. He didn't care. He never cared. I walked out that day with nothing but my bar exam notes and a pounding pulse that screamed I would never forgive him. A year later, I sat in a cafe, quietly watching him sip coffee across the street from his office. He didn't see me. He never would. Not yet. I had learned patience the hard way, how to carry rage like armor, how to let it mold you instead of consuming you. I remember the day I first believed in him. I was 15, and he put my tie straight in the mirror and told me I had the mind to argue with kings. I thought he meant it. I believed him. Every summer after, I shadowed him, took notes, memorized courtroom rhythms, learned the weight of a signature. I loved him for the promise of approval that never came. And now, that love was sharp and bitter in my mouth. The betrayal didn't hit all at once. It was in the little things at first, dismissive glances, passing comments, the way he lingered on my brother's accomplishments while glossing over mine. I blamed myself. Maybe I hadn't been enough. Then I found the email chain, hidden, unsigned, but unmistakable. He had already started transferring client contracts to my brother, undermining every pitch I'd made. The proof was clinical, precise, unarguable. My chest tightened. Heartbreak arrived dressed as numbers, as signatures, as strategies he had manipulated behind my back. But I didn't break. Not then, not ever. I began to plan, slowly, every move deliberate. I returned to my apartment that night and drew a map of his empire, the weak points, the liabilities, the financial oversights he was too arrogant to notice. I took my bar notes and turned them into blueprints for my revenge. I made calls, quiet ones. I connected dots that weren't meant to connect. I waited. Step by step, I undermined him where he would never suspect. I built a rival practice in secret, poaching the clients he thought untouchable. I learned every loophole in his contracts, every overlooked regulatory gap, every mismanaged trust fund. My brother, unsuspecting, became collateral in the architecture of my revenge. I didn't call, didn't warn, didn't gloat. I watched, silent, invisible, while the foundation he had built started to crack. The day I walked into his office, I carried nothing but my composure and the folder of his own failures. He looked at me with the same condescension as before. "You're early," he said, smirking. I smiled, a small, sharp smile. "I thought I'd come collect what's mine." He laughed. He always laughed before reality hit. I handed him the dossier. The numbers, the contracts, the client testimonials, every piece of evidence that showed how his negligence, arrogance, and sexism had destroyed his empire. I watched his eyes go wide, the smirk vanish, his control dissolve into panic. This is impossible," he stammered. How?" I didn't answer. I leaned back and let the silence do the work. Slowly, methodically, I explained how every client he thought secure had already switched to my firm, how his mismanaged funds were frozen pending investigation, how every deal he had counted on had fallen apart in the time I had been preparing. His legacy crumbled in real time, a careful architect of his own undoing. And then he understood, really understood. The realization hit him like a hammer. I wasn't angry. I was precise. I wasn't emotional. I was inevitable. And I had won. I left that office the way I had left before, with nothing but my presence and the knowledge that I had dismantled him without a single rash move. But this time, I carried everything: power, control, justice. and the kind of satisfaction that only comes when the betrayal cuts deep enough to fuel genius. Outside, the city moved on. People didn't notice the fall of a titan. I didn't need them to. I had survived his world of favoritism, prejudice, and deceit. I had rewritten the rules he swore I would never understand. And for the first time, I felt the liberation of being untouchable, untamed, unstoppable. He had taught me everything about law, about strategy, about power, and I had used it all against him. I smiled, quietly. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just walked away. And for the first time in my life, he couldn't stop me.